Well, everybody, it's Friday. So you know what that means? It's time for a Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast Network Roundtable. We got Luke Inman. We got Sam Ekstrom. And you know what? The Vikings had their practices with the 49ers, and it is all said and done. It is Friday. Players are resting in their nests. They're getting ready for Saturday. Who's going to play? Who's not going to play? We're going to jump into that next. But first, we have a word from our sponsors.
Today's show brought to you by betonline.net. It's always the fastest and easiest way to get all your sports wagering information. I just checked the latest Vikings 49ers line. Vikings are favored by 4.5 in this preseason game. I feel like that line is big for the preseason. We'll see if the Vikings can cover it. Minus 210 on the money line, and that's right at betonline.net, where they've got all the lines for all the preseason games and even into the regular season right now. Go check it out. They're your top online resource for not just the NFL, but every other league as well. Head there today on your laptop, mobile device, whatever you have, and get all the information about the action happening. It's BetOnline, where the game starts.
Well, fellas, it was a momentous week, I'd say. We had Adam Thielen. I got to stand next to his wife for a little bit. Her and Caitlin and I and Luke, his agent, a couple of their friends. We were all standing around talking. And I want to get – I just realized this. We got to get Adam Thielen's boy on this podcast because this dude has a tattoo. I don't know if you guys know this. He has a tattoo of Adam Thielen on his thigh. Like Adam's face is tattooed to his thigh. So every time I see this guy, I just laugh at that because not a lot of people know that. But we're going to have to break that on our show one of these days. But
like by choice, or did he lose a bet? Did he lose a bet? So
there's the
or
thing.
Something, or
he lost a bet, but Caitlin, every time he says he lost a bet, Caitlin's like, but nobody forced you to do that. Like you did not have to do like that's like somebody saying you lost a bet, you got to punch your grandma. No, like I'm not punching my grandma. Like I lost the bet. I will pay $1,000. I'll pay you $100. I'll take you to lunch. Like, I'm not getting a tattoo. Like, I don't care what the bet was. I will leave. Like, we don't have to be friends anymore. I'm not tattooing anything stupid on my body for a bet. But this guy did it. So at some point, we got to get that with the thigh on the show. I think I have a picture of it somewhere, too. So we might have to debut that. Maybe get Adam back on the podcast and show Adam the picture again and ask him what he thinks about it.
Who is this guy, by the way? Just I got to keep going with this. Is this his buddy?
He's like Adam's buddy from college. Yeah, he's a Mankato State guy. I'm gonna text Caitlin and get his name and stuff, and then get Caitlin on the pod. Oh yeah, we should get Caitlin on the pod, and have her tell her version of that story, and maybe see if Adam's in the background with the kids or something. But I have to catch her when she's home. Yeah, we'll have to do that. That'll be a good one. But yeah, no, he's a Mankato State guy, and they made a bet and he lost. And I guess that who knows what happens when you're drinking and somebody bets you something. Yeah, this idiot went through with it and got the tattoo. So yeah, that was one of the training camp laughs of the day. But standing next to Caitlin, the funniest for me, and you guys tell me your takeaways from the camp or from yesterday's practice. The funniest for me was Caitlin when Adam started jarring with a guy, but Caitlin's reaction was like, what is he even saying? Like, he doesn't curse. So like, what is he saying? So like for the next minute, me, him, and his friend were like reenacting what we thought Adam was saying. Like, hey guy, get freaking back. Like, back up, guy. Like, I mean, it was just,
Excuse me,
the funniest.
Excuse me, sir. Will you just step back a moment?
It was so funny because she was saying that. She's like, he doesn't curse. So what is he doing over there? Like, it was the funniest, moment. Like, cause I was just thinking, you're right. Like, he does it. Like, it's just like hearing Kirk do it. It's super funny. And so I wonder if maybe after Thielen ran up like a chihuahua, guys just kind of laughed and backed up. But anyway, that was kind of my takeaway, seeing the fire from guys, seeing the want. I saw the 49ers linebacker at the end of one kind of start jarring at the tackle, and his players had to back him up. I saw Justin Jefferson looking at a linebacker after a deep ball. The DB from the 49ers had to get Jefferson to stop looking at the linebacker because they didn't want it to be something. So you could see tensions were getting up. I mean, that day 2 is a long week, or that day 2 of full go. It's a long week. So tensions were high, but it was good to see because there is some fighting this dog versus rolling over and letting somebody just beat you up in your own house. The Vikings weren't backing down, so that was fun to see for me. What about you, Luke?
Yeah, the intensity, you're right. The fire. Some of these guys are fighting for their jobs. I think we talked about it last week. I mean, they're trying to put food on the table. Definitely worth the ticket to buy there. If you're going to pick one practice to go to, those joint practices are always the most intense and most entertaining. It's been the offensive show, who's kidding who, when it comes to the Vikings and how they've looked. But I was worried about this defensive line specifically, just quietly curious how this defensive line was going to look. If you're going to run a 3-4, you need three big bodies in there. And it sounds like Harrison Phillips and Armon Watts have played really well together already. And then, of course, Dalvin Tomlinson as well in the middle there. So the defensive line impressed me quite a bit. Harrison Phillips just looks like he's going to step into that Michael Pierce, Linval Joseph type of role and not skip a beat. That's great to see. And then those pass rushers look great. Not just the starters, za'darius and Daniil pinning their ears back, but Wanham, Patrick Jones. And they'll probably keep at least one, if not two more of those guys. So is it going to be Janarius Robinson, 4th-round pick from Florida State last year? Is it going to be a UDFA, Zach McLeod, Luigi Villain? That'll be interesting to see. We'll talk about this 49ers game here in a little bit. And then I was just interested to see the defensive as a whole, the cornerbacks. Cameron Dantzler's had a really good camp, but how was he going to look against different skill sets, different talents? Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, thought he held his own pretty well. Andrew Booth Jr. looks like, he's got to learn that NFL learning curve, a little grabby, a little aggressive, but all in all, the tools are there for coaches to kind of mold and develop him. And then you got some younger guys too, like a Caleb Evans. So I thought all three phases, all three levels of the defense really impressed me during those joint practices with the Niners.
Yeah, Sam?
Yeah. Back to the Thielen thing. I tweeted about that little scuffle. I just said Adam Thielen rushed the field, had to be held back, taking exception to the 49ers tackling the Vikings running backs. 49ers fans in my mentions, they are salty about it. They are sending me crybaby memes and saying, what's Adam Thielen going to do to us? I don't know where this is coming from. I mean, I don't know if Adam Thielen has a reputation around the league for being this way. But I'm looking at Adam Thielen's stats against the 49ers last year. 7 catches, 62 yards, 2 touchdowns. Back in 2018, 6 catches, 102 yards. So I think he's definitely burned the 49ers before, and he's gotten the better of them. So I think he gets the last laugh on this. But it's really funny, Ron, that you had the other perspective on that sequence, because Thielen was mad. I mean, he was furious that they were bringing Dalvin Cook down and Kene Nwangwu and Alexander Madison. They were getting rough with them. I thought the Vikings offense conducted itself really well. I mean, Luke, you're right. The defense was solid, I thought, both days. But I thought the offense was really good, too. And I keep seeing KJ Osborne pop. I mean, whether it's the 2-minute drill, the hurry-up drill, he's been making some great grabs. Justin Jefferson, near unguardable. Adam Thielen, of course, pops up here and there, too. They've really got a big three working this year, and you see it in situational drills all the time where you can't decide who you want to guard because Osborne is so good in those situations. Jefferson just can't be stopped. He had a couple big grabs with the 2-minute drill. So I love what I see from the offense, and they continue to impress me throughout camp. So I think that if you were assuming that Kevin O'Connell was going to be good for this offense, I think your assumption was correct based on the early returns.
He found the pitcher.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's his thigh.
That. Hey, that's no chicken scratch. At least that's like detailed and looks good. I didn't know what to expect when you said it's his face.
Oh, yeah. That's on his thigh. His face is on his thigh. So we're going to have to get, when we get Thielen back on next time and get Caitlin, we need to just get this guy. I'm going to get Caitlin to give me his number. We'll get him on and just talk about what happened and why he did this. Because that's a great talker.
This guy better hope that Adam Thielen
that's like a fantasy
doesn't
football
fall
loser
off
punishment right there.
Yeah. Like, what if Adam Thielen falls off the deep end, though, in his 40s or 50s? Yeah. Like, what if Adam Thielen does some crazy stuff later in life? That's going to look really bad.
That's great. No, I just want to follow. I just want to ask you guys real quick. You guys were there both days. Everything, again, just passing with flying colors, all three phases, you name it. What concerned you? Was there anything that jumped out that said, all right, clearly, maybe it's a depth issue, maybe it was a starter, maybe it was just one guy getting burned repeatedly, but anything that concerned you coming out of these two joint practices? Because all we've really heard after these last 48 hours is, oh my God, the Vikings look poised and they look great and the vibe is good around camp.
For me, no, not really. I mean, this is what I would say. Like, the QB2 is not consistent. Like all of a sudden now, what's his name? Sean Mannion's throwing bombs, but that's in practice. That's with a red jersey on and nobody running at you that can actually touch you. They can run by you. They can't hit you. So I'm not sold on Mannion, even though he had a couple great passes in practice. I want to see it transition to the game because I feel like his gameplay was not as great. That's the only thing that kind of concerns me is that Sean Mannion does look good in practice. And that's concerning because if you're making your judgments based off practice, Sean Mannion is QB2 right now unless they find somebody else. If you go off the games, and we only have one game, so small sample size, we'll get a huge sample size, I think, tomorrow. It's got to be Kellen Mond. And so I think that's the only thing that's concerning to me is Kellen Mond in practice. I don't know if he's just learning still in like in a game that the adrenaline kicks in and just play mode comes out. But in practice, he looked okay, but he didn't look game-like. Like he didn't look like he looked when we saw him in the game where he was making some great throws. So, who knows? And maybe the 49ers just had, they don't give you, like Kirk threw a lot of tight balls and tight windows. And maybe he's not comfortable trying to make those throws just yet. But that's the thing about the 49ers defense. You're not going to get easy tosses. You're going to have to work for every throw. But yeah, I think that's it. But, and I talked to a couple former, because they're Jerry Kill guys. One of Jerry Kill's linebackers, two of his coaches are with the 49ers. So we were talking for a while after practice, and Jimmy Garoppolo didn't make the trip. So if you're looking for a QB2 for cheap, maybe like if he's willing to just say, because if you're going to be a QB2, you probably don't want to be where you're at. Like it's kind of like a slap in the face. I'd rather go somewhere else and be a QB2. Why not come to Minnesota? That's a great option for a backup and just, trade a couple fifth, third, second round picks and get you a great backup. Who knows? But anyway, what did you get from that, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my two concerns aren't necessarily on-field concerns. One of them is just if you're worried about the injury bug hitting a little bit. Jesse Davis got shaken up on Wednesday and then didn't practice yesterday, and then Chris Reed has missed about a week now. So you're losing a little bit of interior line depth. We don't know the severity of those injuries, but you don't love to see that. Although Ed Ingram looking good does help kind of massage that over because he really has been impressive. Second concern, and I got to toss in a little Kirk Cousins slander here because I know it bothers Ron. I do look at Trey Lance, and I didn't think he was perfect by any means, but I look at sort of his ability to extend plays and his athleticism, and it just reminds me of what Kirk Cousins isn't. I think that Lance, while he might have struggled at times in these practices are really based around kind of getting back and getting to your first read. And when the play breaks down, people kind of take their foot off the gas. I think in the regular season, his ability to extend plays will be fantastic. Like he's going to run for a lot of yards. He's going to make a lot of improvisational throws where he's running out of the pocket, finding Debo in the flat. He did that a couple times actually yesterday, where Debo was kind of his safety net. And I don't see that ability from Cousins still. And I don't think we ever will. He's 33. He's not going to suddenly become super athletic. He's a drop back pocket passer. Occasionally get him on a rollout with a design play action. But I am reminded when I see Lance that ability to extend plays can cover up a lot of other issues. So even if he's not as comfortable in the pocket, I think his athleticism is going to come in handy. And I can tell already that he's going to be a problem for opposing defenses. And that's not something that anyone says about Kirk Cousins.
Right. Yeah. And so jumping into our next topic, I mean, you said depth. We talk about guards. Look at the depth of this draft. I mean, did Kwesi hit the nail on the head? You got Lewis Cine, Andrew Booth Jr., Ed Ingram, and Brian Asamoah were his top 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. If you want to throw in a Caleb Evans and a za'darius, and then even down to Ty Chandler, like that's a solid. I mean, Ty Chandler may or may not make this roster because I think it's going to be tough to get CJ Ham out, even though you don't do a ton of ISO and a ton of fullback stuff. That's going to be a tough one. I think if they do have to move on because they just don't, they don't use them enough. That's going to be one of the toughest things Minnesota fans are ever going to have to deal with is if CJ Ham doesn't make it. But If you look at Ty Chandler, but you take him out of there, you got a Sezi Atame who's going to make it, and you got a Caleb Evans who probably is going to make it as long as he stays healthy. But those top four, they're all going to contribute this year. Ed Ingram looks like he's probably the starter. Lewis Cine most likely is the odds-on favorite to be starter. Andrew Booth is going to be worked in. I think Cam Dancer looks really confident right now, which is a great thing to have your second-round pick be able to sit a little bit and not have to be thrown into the fire. And then Brian Asamoah is going to play a lot in sub packages. He's going to play a ton of special teams. He moves well in this 3-4 defense where they can use him as different players as the Joker. He can come in and play the outside jack. He can rush the quarterback. He can guard, he can cover a running back. So in my opinion, the answer is yes. I think Kwesi did a great job. Him and Kevin O'Connell did a great job with those four because they're all – we don't have one guy in there we're like, yeah, no, that was a terrible pick. Like those four guys are going to play. And I think that's huge in your first year to kind of hit it right where it is because last couple of years, let's be real, these third, fourth round picks that have been picked here have not contributed and probably won't be on this roster. So to see those four really shining right now, I think that's huge. What do you got, Luke?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So far, so good. Early signs pointing to this being a very, very solid draft in that B plus range with the potential to be in that A range, A minus, A. And you mentioned the first four picks. Listen, early round picks are supposed to be good. Now, they don't always pan out. Obviously, there's plenty of busts along the way, but they're supposed to be good. That's why they were drafted in the first round. Where you really can excel in the draft and fill your roster, the cracks of your roster is those day 2, day 3 picks. And you mentioned it. Ed Ingram, day 2, Brian Asamoah, Caleb Evans, maybe we don't see him a ton this year, but we know Kwesi, that was his draft crush. Maybe when they lose Patrick Peterson next year, which we're all assuming, he's on that 1-year contract now. He'll probably be gone next year. Everybody on the depth chart gets elevated. We see a lot more Caleb Evans. And then, like you mentioned, once you get to that point, if you can even go 50% on those last couple picks, which right now you've got Ty Chandler, Vidarian Lowe's probably going to make the team, I would assume. And then Jalen Naylor's still in that mix for that wide receiver 5, 6, 7 in there, pending how many they keep. If you can have 50% of those picks, that's a huge hit rate, and that's a huge success. I think it's one thing to end up being a starter like an Ed Ingram and a Brian Asamoah. It's another thing in how you get to that AA plus draft. If you end up hitting a superstar, right? Like a Justin Jefferson, guys like that. So we'll see 2-3 years down the road where Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth are. Are they just starters? Are they solid quality guys? Or are they kind of near that superstar kind of status? Too early to tell right now, but right now, yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, Ron. B plus for sure with the potential to move up to an A minus, maybe even an A.
Yeah, and the rubber meets the road when they actually have to start a game, right? I mean, I think all of them are in position to start games this year. In Ingram's case, it might be week 1. In Booth, Cine, and Asamoah's case, I think they're probably one injury away. And inevitably, someone's going to get hurt. Cam Bynum, Cam Dantzler, Jordan Hicks. They're probably the first man off the bench to replace a lot of those guys. And they probably will have to start games. So how will they perform in those situations? That's going to be the key. But could we be talking about this as sort of the 2015 draft where Spielman absolutely nailed it, where he got stars. He got Kendricks, Hunter, Diggs, and of course Trey Waynes was very good as well. Could this be that type of draft that sets the Vikings up for years to come? Because look at all the mileage the Vikings are still getting out of that 2015 draft. They got, 4 or 5 years of a couple of those guys, and they're getting now 8, 9 years out of, Kendricks and Daniil. So think about what a draft like that could mean for the future of your franchise if you nail it. And top 4 picks, I mean, it seems like they all have positive momentum going into the season. And credit the coaching staff, too, for developing them well, keeping them healthy, and they all seem to kind of have that upward trajectory. So I'm really encouraged by it.
Sam, 2015.
Yeah, and let's talk about
you
the
forgot
game.
to bring up TJ Clemmings. You didn't bring up TJ. Come on, man. Hey, here's my one.
TJ's my guy,
though.
The best pick.
No, I love TJ. TJ, yeah. Here's my one qualm, and I want to ask Ron what he thinks about this. Am I overreacting here? I'm a big draft guy, mock draft, study them all offseason, whatever. When they traded that far back and didn't recoup a next year's first or even second round pick, I thought they really got sniped there. Is that overreaction? I know all these trade value charts change all the time. People don't go off the Jimmy Johnson trade chart and things like that. But just as far back as they dropped to not get a future pick next year, I thought they kind of got swindled a little bit. What did you think about that trade? And looking back at it now, do you think that was still the right move, or do you think they could have got a little bit extra?
Maybe. And I think they even said that. They said that in their presser, like, maybe we went a little too brash at this one. And but again, that's a rookie GM and a rookie head coach dealing with vets. So I mean, we all. I mean, I don't know if everybody's seen it. I love the movie Game Day with Kevin Costner.
Love it. Love it.
And I love the dynamic of like the breakfast, guys eating breakfast, got GMs calling them, doing the pause and letting the GM think for himself. Like, what do you think about this guy? What do you mean? What do you think? Like, what's wrong with him? And then they don't draft the quarterback, and now everybody's panicking about, who's going to be taken and what's going on. Like, I love that. So that happens. That happens where GMs, like, they don't know, and they want to make sure they're getting the best deal. They want to make sure they're getting the best player they're getting. And sometimes the other team gets the best deal. Like in every trade, just like in stocks, there's a seller and a buyer. There's not often that both sides come out perfectly even like the Vikings did with Stephon Diggs and then drafting Justin Jefferson. That's the one time where you could say, you know what, this was kind of an even Steven trade. It worked out. We gave you a first round. And then also, the Eagles helped them out. Like, it technically wouldn't have been good. Like, think about it if the Eagles actually take Justin Jefferson and the Vikings have to get Rager. We're probably now pissed off, and that's probably like everybody's like, oh my God, what did we do? Like, why did we do this? Like, why did we get rid of Stephon Diggs? And Vikings fans will be tweeting Diggs every day, all day about please come back. Well, they got Justin Jefferson, and it doesn't matter anymore. So again, shout out to the Eagles for hooking it up. But, I think it's one of those things where you just have to look at what could you possibly get. And in this instance, we'll have to see down the road, like, where does Lewis Cine fall? Where do the possible picks that could have been taken? It's so much involved in that. But no, I'd say in that instance, being a rookie. Now, if this was like the third year, I might say, yeah, come on now. You know better than that. But for a rookie, you're just trying to get, you're trying not to spend too much money on who you want, which I'm guessing they wanted Lewis Cine because they didn't get Kyle Hamilton, which I think honestly is a good thought too now. Kyle Hamilton does not look great. They dropped back and got the guy they wanted, which is Lewis Cine, right before I think the Chiefs wanted him at 33 or something somebody was saying. So, or whoever had 30, Tampa had him at 33. So, they got him right before Tampa would have gotten him. So that was great. At the end of the day, I think it worked out, but now it's time to move on to the 49ers game. And I don't really understand preseason. We can predict what we think is going to happen. What I think is going to happen is they're going to rest 30 guys again. I think Kirk's maybe going to play one series. Not sure if Adam Thielen, those guys are going to play. I know they were supposed to play in game one a little bit, but then Kirk got COVID, so then all that went out the window. I think the joint practices, they got a lot of work. So my prediction is, I think, I'm going to go with the Kellen Mond prediction. I think Kellen Mond at home takes a slight step back at times. And then at some point wows the fans. And then, with the home fans, everybody's going to be cheering and hooping and hollering that, they can't wait for Kellen Mond to be QB2. That's my prediction.
No, I like that. I think I'm with you. Same page. Probably don't see any of the starters. If you do even see the starters for just a series or two, I don't expect to see any of the core vets, right? Kendricks, Patrick Peterson, Harrison Smith, Thielen. I don't expect to see any of those guys, even if the starters do actually play. And then, is Ed Ingram, if the starters play, is Ed Ingram in there starting at right guard? Who's the backup centers here? What does that look like in the coach's mind here? We get to put ourselves in their feet and see if it's Chris Reed, Schlottman, what that looks like. I'm excited to see these young pass rushers continue to get after the passer. Now they get to play at home in front of that home crowd, a little bit of edge there. Those young cornerbacks we always talk about, seeing them take another step forward. And then punt returner. I'm just still interested about what's going on at punt returner. Amir Smith-Marset bobbled that punt last week. Let's see if he gets the first crack at it again. Let's see if it's a guy like Albert Wilson or somebody else in the mix. And then that wide receiver 5, 6, 7 competition. I've just really been kind of honed in and drilled in on. I just want to see what the order looks like. And I think, Sam, maybe you brought it up the other day on the football party. BC Johnson quietly ahead of most of those guys when we talk about that group. He seems like, again, remember 2 years ago before he got hurt, he was cemented as wide receiver 3. Then he gets hurt, misses a year and a half. KJ Osborne steps up. But it seems like when a guy needs a breather and goes to the sideline, BC's the first guy in, as you mentioned. So maybe BC clearly ahead of some of those other guys, even Amir Smith-Marset at times as well. But those are the big things I'm looking forward to, as well as Ron mentioned, Kellen Mond. I think he's going to go out there, scramble, make some big plays, but you just want to see the progression. I don't expect to be night and day different, but just to see a little bit more anticipation, a little less robotic at times, just to see that he's, even if it's baby steps, taking one step forward in his development as a young quarterback.
Yeah, that's a good point, Luke. And I think that on the BC Johnson point, I noticed yesterday, KJ Osborne got a little shaken up, one or two plays. He was right back in there. But during his absence, BC Johnson was in the slot, and he was taking that wide receiver 3 role. Now, I've seen Amir Smith-Marset be in that position as well. I still think that Amir Smith-Marset is your wide receiver 4. I just see more explosive potential from him, more speed. Sean Mannion had a good connection with him both days against the 49ers, including a bomb yesterday, which Ron mentioned. So I like Amir as wide receiver 4, but I think BC, based on his experience, is certainly in the mix for wide receiver 5. Now, my hesitation has always been the contract. Is BC so much better than Jalen Naylor, Tristan Jackson, Myron Mitchell, that you're going to cut one of them, potentially lose them when you have them for the next 3-4 years, and then you only get BC for 1 year because it's the final year of his deal? That, to me, is an important consideration that I would take into account. However, I don't see Mitchell, Jackson, Naylor running away with this thing at all. I think they're all kind of just treading water. I don't think they're emerging as these like unbelievable prospects, and you can probably sneak them through to your practice squad pretty easily, and then keep Johnson on your active roster. So I don't have a problem with BC at all. I think he's got good technique, good head on his shoulders. He can play inside, outside. That's somebody that you want on your football team. And then where does Albert Wilson fit? But obviously it's bubble watch. I mean, the game is going to be, I think, most compelling to look at those depth pieces. Who's on the bubble on that defensive line, offensive line, secondary, who's going to play their way onto this team. They've got another 5 cuts coming next week, down to 80, and then, of course, 27 cuts after that following the 3rd preseason game. So jobs are on the line, and I'm much more intrigued by the bubble guys than I am by maybe a couple starters who get a few snaps for 1 or 2 series. Offensive line maybe gets a series or 2, but I'm really watching those 2nd and 3rd quarters. How will those fringe players perform?
Luke, you sold me. I was so struggling with BC. Like, he hasn't splashed. Yeah. And when I'm a receivers coach, you need splash. And that's what I was going off of. Amir Smith-Marset, Albert Wilson is 4 and 5. But you know what? The turtle usually can win in a turtle race versus a rabbit. So I'm gonna go with you on that. I'm gonna hype him up on the pregame show tomorrow. Now I got a new talker. BC is wide receiver 4. Amir Smith-Marset is 5 because he's the punt returner. Albert Wilson, they bought him in as a free agent. Maybe he's 6 because Dan Chisena, Blake Pro, all those guys that are like not practicing and hurt, they're probably not going to make the roster at this point now. I think for special teams, you got enough DBs to play gunner. Dan Chisena doesn't give you enough at gunner to warrant having a 7th or 6th receiver anyway, if that's your guy, is that number. So, yeah, I could see that. I could see the 6th receiver being Wilson because BC can play gunner, and some of these guys are going to have to do some special. And Smith-Marset can be your punt returner and kick returner with Kane back there. So that does give you a chance to bring in 6. And with this offense, I mean, I'm looking at the Rams roster. It's not like
not unfathomable. No, not at all.
QB3 might not be there, and then there might only carry 3 running backs. So, yeah, there's a chance for 6 receivers in this offense.
Yeah, and like Sam mentioned, you can sneak those other 2, Tristan and Myron, maybe on the UDFA practice squad, a little bit easier as well. And you're right. Like, BC is not the high-end, high-ceiling explosion playmaker like Amir Smith-Marset's potential has to be. But sometimes you need a mix. They don't all need to be the high-end guys. You need a little bit of mix.
You sold
in
me
there.
on that. BC, I've been mad at BC. I need BC to make a splash. So I'm with you. On that. So here we go. Another one. 30-year-old Vikings, which that doesn't sound old to me at all. But Sam thinks it's old, so we're going to go with Sam's old talker.
They're
30-year-old
ancient.
Vikings. You have Vikings over 30. You
So
got Patrick
old.
Peterson, Cousins, Thielen, Harrison, Hicks, and Kendricks. Is there another one that you might think of? But those guys, any Viking over 30 who's sitting on a career year this season, Luke, to you.
Well, Cousins is going to have his best statistical season of his career. I don't even know if I'm really going out on a limb there, to be honest. And he's had good
He had
statistical
4,900
seasons, no
yards,
doubt.
though. So you're saying he's going to get
That's right.
5,000?
Yes, I am. Yep. And he did that under Mike Zimmer and Clint Kubiak and those kind of offensive coaches and those kind of mindsets of let's be conservative. Don't take that extra shot. Don't be aggressive. Don't try to sneak it in that extra window. Don't try to buy yourself extra time and make a play when it's not there. This time around, buckle up, baby. 5,000 yards, 50 TDs is on the table right now for Cousins. But again, to me, I don't even think that's that shocking or surprising. So I'm going to pick another one. I still think Harrison Smith's got a lot more gas left in the tank than people are thinking and leading on. He plays that position at an all-pro level that he's going to statistically be able to collect a lot of tackles, some sacks, some interceptions, get his hands on the ball. And I think he's going to have not necessarily a bounce back year, but just a fresh start, a reset button for all these core guys, Kendricks, Hunter, you name it, from that same system under Mike Zimmer the last 8 years, which was good. I mean, they had definitely Zimmer, defensive-minded coach, one of the best in the business, but just to get a fresh look and a more modern approach now to the way the game's being played now, I think Harrison Smith's sitting on a really good year. Maybe not a career year because, let's be honest, he's had some great seasons in his body of work in his career, but I think he's still got a lot more left in the tank than I think, again, people are leading on.
Sam, what you got?
So, you know who turns 30 on September 8th? Za'darius Smith. Za'darius Smith. Career year for Za'darius would be 14 sacks. I think that's attainable. I think if he stays healthy for 17 games, obviously the extra game helps a little bit. I think that's absolutely attainable. And the way he looked against San Francisco, sometimes against Trent Williams, backs that opinion up for me. He looked the best he's looked all camp when the bullets were flying against the 49ers. And I think that it's not, between Hunter and Smith, one of them's going for 15 sacks this year. Now, I don't know who it's going to be necessarily, but I don't think you can necessarily say that it's definitely going to be Hunter, it's definitely going to be Smith. I think that teams are going to approach them. They kind of have to pick their poison, right? They're going to have to decide where the tight end is going to go. Well, if they decide to defend Hunter, who might be viewed as just a little above Smith, well, then Smith might be the one who gets the sacks. So I think Za'Darius Smith could be sitting on a big season for the Vikings when people are kind of sleeping on him a little bit. Coming off injury, he's 30 years old now. This could be a big opportunity for him to really shock people and kind of get back to where he was in like 2019.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go. I like the Kirk Cousins take because I kind of was gonna go with Kirk because I'm like, he not only has Justin Jefferson and Thielen, he has KJ Osborne, he also has Kevin O'Connell. So I do like that one. But the Commanders' year, 4,917 yards. So he has to get 4,918. That's like, or 5,000. 35 touchdowns in 2020 with the Vikings. So he has to hit 36 touchdowns. I think that's
you get that extra game though now too, though. Keep that in mind. That helps.
Interceptions, it does help. Interceptions, I'm not going to worry about that. And then passer rating 107.4 was his best in 2019 with the Vikings, and so he has to hit like 108. Doable, very doable. 5,000 yards though. That's the one that I'm like, man, that's a lot. Because the Commanders were losing a lot of games when Kirk Cousins was trying to play comeback king, and he did it a lot. He did it a few times, and that's where the "you like that" came from. And then he followed up with another franchise. They're going to franchise because they franchised him twice. So the 4,900 was the "you like that" because, that year because he was pissed off being franchised. Then they franchised him again, and then he went for 4,000 yards, and that's when he's like, all right, I'm out of here. Like, you guys clearly don't want to give me a contract. And then we know the whole dinner at Manny's with Spillman, and that's all she wrote. I got to go with Adam Thielen, though. And this is why. When you look at Adam Thielen, because I looked at Justin Jefferson yesterday, and I talked to Ambry Thomas, former Detroit Martin Luther King, King Crusader, King Dog. He's now, and then Big Ten player as well. So we kind of went the same path, and now NFL. And Ambry and I were just talking. I love to ask DBs about, guys like Justin Jefferson versus Adam Thielen. And he said, man, like Justin's, he does all the little wiggle waggle at the line. And he said it's different now because the rules, you can't really be too close to the line of scrimmage like Deion Sanders used to be, because they're going to throw a flag and say you're offsides. Where Deion, if you watch back, he used to get a little bit of extra helmet over that line, but his toes were on it, so they didn't call it. You can't do that anymore. It's your entire body they're going to really look at. So you can't quick jam a guy that's doing that little jiggle jaggle that they do at the line of scrimmage now. But he said Justin Jefferson's kind of soft, like at the line. Like he's going to do, he says he's going to do his thing, but he's soft. Like he's not going to try to muscle you and beat you up and, and run through you. He's going to finesse you. He said Thielen is a dog. He was like, man, Thielen is going to slap you. He's going to bang into you. He's going to do everything. He's going to use his body. And so, hearing a starting NFL cornerback, young, talk about guys like that, because a lot of guys fear Jefferson because of the finesse. But he's like, nah, man. And that's that Detroit in him, because we all grew up the same in Detroit. Like, it was physical play. Like, we used to do 7-on-7 padded, but it was no flags. Like, we wanted to get better. So if you need to hold and grab me, I'm throwing you off. Like, do it. But we did it with, not to get each other hurt, but we just went at it. And he grew up in the same system I did. So I know what he's talking about. So when he says that about Thielen, I'm like, man, like, you know what? This dude Thielen might have himself a year. And so when I look at Adam Thielen's stats, and for him to have a career year, he had 1,373 yards. That's doable. 1,400 yards. Now, the tough thing is Justin Jefferson's going for 15, 16, maybe 1,900. So 1,400 might be tough, but I think he can do it in this offense, because if Kirk's going to have 5,000, Thielen's got to have at least 1,500 of that. Jefferson's going to have 2,000 of it. You look at touchdowns. That's the one where it's like, well, but, the 14 touchdowns in 2020, that was a lot. But if Kirk's going to throw for 40 touchdowns, I mean, JJ's going to get what, 15? Thielen's got to get 14 at least, or 15, and then the other 10 are going to be spread out. That's 40 touchdowns there. Catches, 113. Now, that's the one. But can he get 114 catches? Maybe. 100 catches, yes. 115, maybe not. So I think Thielen is primed in some of those metrics. I think he can have a career year under this offense, because you saw Justin Jefferson burn a linebacker, which just meant the defense was lined up in a bad set. Jefferson motioned to the right spot. He got man-to-man with a linebacker. Kirk took advantage of the mismatch. I loved it. Like, people were like, oh, that's a mismatch. That's the whole point. Cooper Kupp had a lot of mismatches. And that's why Kevin O'Connell's going to make sure Jefferson ends up there. But, hey, if I'm a team and I'm paying attention, I might man up Jefferson with my guy. You follow him all over and everybody else play your play. So then what happens? Adam Thielen's there. Because a lot of these teams have that man corner now, and they might want to take Justin Jefferson away. Well, then who's going to be open? Adam Thielen. So that's why I think Adam Thielen does have a shot to do it. But as we move on to the last topic, Timberwolves schedule came out. I'm a basketball guy. I love the fact that LeBron James signed for, $97 million, and he's aged like 40, basically. Like, that's just star power. That's not skill. Like, he is great. And so when you look at that schedule, though, I love basketball. One, the Lakers jumped out to me right away. Lakers are coming here. So I got to see LeBron. But then the Jazz. That's one that maybe not a lot of people aren't worried about. I am, because I love when former players play their team. Rudy Gobert playing the Jazz. I want to see what that looked like. Is he going to overdo it, just try to block everything? And is that going to be a game to watch? That's as far as I got on the schedule. I didn't even look at Christmas games and holiday games and all that, because at that point, football is still really too high for me. But I'm looking forward to those early games, Lakers and then the Jazz. What about you guys?
Yeah, I'll take a stab. I like that they've got 9 of their first 12 at home, and against not that good a competition. They've got a chance to start really fast, and that's exactly what this franchise is looking for with the new look roster. I'm sure they've sold a bunch of season tickets. This is going to be a momentous season for the Timberwolves on paper. Now, obviously, things can go wrong, but they're primed for like a 9-3 start, which is awesome. And then how about this? 16 nationally televised games. The Minnesota Timberwolves are on the map. They had a little bit of this type of exposure in the Jimmy Butler year and change. Wasn't a very long stay. But this is going to be a year where people are talking about the Timberwolves, and that's going to be pretty cool. They've got the flashy ownership. They've got the big front court with Cat and Gobert. They've got Ant Edwards, who's on Netflix movies. The Timberwolves are going global, and they're going to be on ESPN, TNT, NBA TV. So people are going to have their eyes on this group. There's legitimate pressure on the Timberwolves now. So how are they going to handle it? I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, a little bit more of a surface NBA fan, getting much more into it after this last year than you two. But there's a great article out here by Jack Borman on Twitter at JRBorman13. Breaks down the whole schedule and couple just big bullet points, paraphrasing a little bit. First off, what you mentioned, Sam, 16 televised games. They only had 4 last year. So 4 times as many televised games, and 10 of those are going to be on ESPN or TNT. So you're right, they are going global. Call it the Anthony Edwards effect. You know, when it really boils down to it, I think that big Rudy Gobert trade, and then obviously just having a young superstar like Ant Edwards, though, really helps get those primetime games. And then he also noted the Wolves have not one but 2 stretches of 10 games during the season with the easiest schedule in the NBA, and a third 10-game stretch with the second easiest schedule. It's in the first half of the season. The schedule does get a lot tougher in the second half, but if you're a team still trying to figure out their nucleus and chemistry, things like that, after that big trade with Rudy Gobert, you want the easy stuff first, and then hopefully you kind of get those growing pains out of the way, and when things get tougher that second half of the year, hopefully you got that chemistry and timing and stuff like that down. So those are the 3 big bullet points, but recommend people going to check that out. Again, it's by Jack Borman, but just does an outstanding job of breaking that stuff down. But yeah, a lot of stuff to be excited about just looking at the schedule at first glance.
Here's something weird, though. I don't know if you guys noticed this. I was looking at this, and I was like, what is going on? So they play the Thunder at home. Then they turn around and play the Jazz 2 days later. And then they go back and play the Thunder at their place. Like, super weird. And then this is the one that got
San
me.
Antonio
after that,
3 times? Yeah.
They play them back-to-back at home, though. Like, they play them on the 24th. They rest a day. And then they turn around and play them again like a baseball. I do like that. Like, I like the baseball, like basketball, college-type format like that. But that's super weird because that's never happened. But I'm going to check some other people's schedules out because I wonder if they're trying that to see if this, to cut down on travel. Because I know that was a big thing for the NBA collective bargaining agreement was guys weren't happy with, like, playing L.A., and then all of a sudden having to jump on a plane, go all the way to New York to deal with the Knicks, and then having to jump on a plane and go all the way back and play the Warriors. And I know a lot of people were talking about that just because they want more money, like they want baseball type money. They want $450 million contracts. And I'm like, dude, you're on a private jet. Like it's a 30-seater. Like it's a gigantic 757 with like 30 luxury seats, food, a waitress. You got come on now. You got you're not flying on like a commercial airline in middle economy. And I kind of see what they did there because they're playing the Spurs and then they're kind of staying like Southwest because they're going to play the Suns after that. So I think they're trying to work it, trying to work the schedule a little bit because they have the Rockets at home, then they have the Knicks at home, then they have the Suns at home, and then they go to Memphis. And so it's an interesting look because they go from Memphis to Cleveland to Orlando. So not a bad travel, but also it's travel because then they're on the 76ers. So they have a 4-game road stretch, and that's the stuff they were talking about. Like, hey, why are we doing it this way? You got us going from Memphis to Cleveland to Orlando to Philadelphia. It's not that bad on the jet. Like, come on now. But yeah, what do you guys think about that? The back-to-backs. Like, do you think that becomes a thing in the NBA?
Yeah, I think that this is a definite intentional move to reduce travel. I don't really know why you do it with San Antonio because that's probably one of your easier trips, to be honest. You just fly straight south into Texas. You'd rather have that, for those Southern California games or maybe the Florida games. But I get it, and I like it. I don't think that
they have and by the way, they have it twice. The Trailblazers, they play twice. Look to the end. The Trailblazers, they play December 10th and December 12th in Portland. So again, clearly it's intentional.
Yeah, like who this is really for? It's for the teams that are coastal, and if they have those long flights, I'm sure they're trying to bang out a couple games when they can to reduce those cross country flights. But I'm fine with it. I mean, I'm okay. Like if you get to know your opponents a little bit and then play them again 2 nights later, I think that makes for good drama. It can increase the rivalry. I know it's maybe a little redundant, but I have no issue with it. I think that NBA teams have to travel so much. Why not take the load off just a little bit?
Yeah, not too much to add there. I think you're absolutely right. Just much more efficient for everybody. The logistics of traveling, things like that. I think it does make a little bit of sense. A little weird to see. I'm with you, Ron. A little weird and goofy to see right away, but I think we'll get used to it pretty quick. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Well, we're gonna get used to it. I do like it. Like after looking at the Trailblazers, looking at the Suns, I do like that, like a baseball interleague type of deal where you're gonna stay there for 3 or 4 days and just play each other 2-3 times, just like college basketball. Like a lot of times they scrimmage and they do that. So yeah, why not get it out the way, play a few times, like the playoffs. It becomes like a small playoff format where you're getting that team 2 to 3 times. An easy way to knock out 82 games and not have a ton of travel. So I'm with it. We'll see how it pans out this year. If more teams do it, if it becomes a 3-game series instead of a 2, but I think 2 is a sweet spot, and they might have found lightning in a bottle. We'll see how the fans take to it, and then we'll see if they give out deals. Like, hey, if you buy 2 tickets to both nights, we'll give you whatever 75% or 25% discount or something. Who knows what that looks like. But that'll do it today for the Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast Network's Roundtable. That's Luke Inman. That's Sam Ekstrom. I'm Ron Johnson. Please make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. You can find Locked On Sports Minnesota on any platform from Spotify to iTunes or wherever else you get them, the iHeartMedia app, wherever it is. Find us, and then you can find Luke Inman and Reggie Wilson on Superior Sports Talk, and then myself and Sam Ekstrom on the Ron Johnson Show. Thank you. Have a great day.